welcoming the Honourable Rachel Notley, Leader of the Official Opposition.
Well, good morning, everyone. Boy, oh boy, that's quite the hard act to follow, I have to say. Thank you so much, Krista, for that wonderful introduction. And let me just say, it is so great to be here with all of you this morning, gathered today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6, and also as we acknowledge the Métis people who share such a deep connection with this land. I also, like many of you, want to recognize and thank the entire Alberta Municipalities Board, and specifically outgoing President Cathy Heron, for all of your collective dedication to this province. And Cathy, you have without question served with integrity, with focus, and with compassion. You've never been shy about speaking your mind, and I know that this is not the last we've heard from you when it comes to the future of our great province. Thank you so much for your service. And one more round of applause, please, for Cathy. And also, I too share that propensity to break into tears very, very quickly. So, we'll have to start a support group. Nonetheless, I would also like to congratulate all of the new board, and in particular, newly elected President Tyler Gandam. The Alberta NDP looks forward to working with all of you and you, Tyler, on so many of our shared priorities. So congratulations to Tyler and to the whole board. So my friends, we are at the tail end of what I hope has been a very great convention and trade show. And I want to thank you all for coming together for such important conversations that I know you've been having. The people running our downtown bars and restaurants in Edmonton, well, I think they also thank you too. It's always fun overhearing councillors debating the alphabet soup of current and past municipal funding grants as they walk down our downtown sidewalks to grab a drink near here. One councillor yells out, LGFF, another responds with MSI, FCSS, and CFEP or CFEP. And then we get into PERC and the BMTG and the STIP and the GIPOT, and my personal favorite, the WTF. Okay, maybe that last one isn't an actual program quite yet, but I am sure some of you have been asking yourself that very question at times while watching some of the provincial politics in our province. In all seriousness, though, I know that the passionate debate at a convention like this runs well past this main plenary, and I want you to know that I value the work that you all do, and I understand that it can be exhausting and it can be difficult, but it is so, so worthwhile. It's so worthwhile, even if sometimes it can also be frustrating and sometimes a little heartbreaking, but it's all very important. And honestly, speaking of heartbreak, well, there's a small little elephant in the room that I suppose I should probably address. Yes, I had hoped to be here with you, maybe 20 minutes from now, speaking to you as your premier. That was my goal. I had hoped to come here today to fulfill our Alberta NDP commitments to increasing funding for FCSS, to talk about our negotiations that were already underway about how better sharing our revenues together, how we could do that as partners in prosperity, and how we could have committed to major capital investments in rinks and roads and community centers and so, so much more. And while we did come up short, we as in the Alberta NDP, of our ultimate goal, we also recognize that Albertans did give us a critically important job to do as the largest official opposition that Alberta has had in the history of our province. Thank you. Now, as for me, and well, my future as leader, well, my friends, I've been doing a lot of thinking. And I'm here today, actually, to tell you that I'm still thinking about what's next. I was just checking to see if you folks are all awake. You know, the truth is this decision is still pending, but that was really quite a lot of fun. I think I finally managed to get the reporters at the back of the room to look up from their computers, so excellent. Anyway, what I will do is proudly take my seat in the legislature this fall as the longest-serving member there, and I will, on your behalf, be a fierce and dedicated advocate for the Albertans that all of us collectively represent. And I'm also going to be doing that far from alone. I will have 37 colleagues to my left and to my right. And I will tell you, having a caucus this size has been a bit of an adjustment so far. Back when I first started as an MLA, it seems like a million years ago, back in 2008, we could hold our caucus meetings inside in an elevator, or one of those old-fashioned things some of you might remember, a phone booth. And you know, when we ordered in pizza for one of those late-night sitting filibusters of the legislature, we could also eat it for breakfast the next morning, and then for lunch, and then dinner again the following night. But a caucus as large as we have now also has its benefits. For example, we now have 2 municipal affairs critics for you to reach out to and for them to reach out and connect with all of you in this room. First, we have Kyle Kosowski, the newly elected MLA for Sherwood Park, an incredibly smart, thoughtful, and rather tall representative. So why don't you stand up and give us all a wave, Kyle? Kyle is focused on what matters to mid-sized cities and to smaller rural communities as well. If you have an affordable housing project to champion, a road that needs paved, a culvert that needs built, or a hospital that's never open, well, any other one of a million other issues that you deal with, Kyle is your guy. And his municipal affairs counterpart is my longtime friend, our caucus deputy leader, and one of the most compassionate, caring, and hard-working representatives this province has ever seen. Of course, I'm talking about the one and only Sarah Hoffman. So, Sarah, if you could just give a quick stand and a wave for everybody. Now, Sarah is focused on the issues that are facing our 2 largest cities. Of course, housing, affordable and accessible transit, public safety, major infrastructure, and so much more. So if you're here representing Edmonton or Calgary, go to Sarah at any hour of the day. Seriously, I am really not sure when or if she sleeps. We also have a number of our other caucus members who are with us today. So I'm just wondering if those who are here could just stand and give a quick wave. I know I've got 6 or 7 of them there. Yes, just a big wave there, folks. Thanks, guys. Now, there are a lot of things that you have been talking to these MLAs about and will continue to in the months and years ahead. But before I get into some of those issues, since this is the first time I've been able to address you since the election, there is one issue that I want to address that, quite frankly, impacts all of us equally, whether you're leader of the official opposition, mayor of Medicine Hat, or newly elected councillor in, say, Drayton Valley. Fact is, I'm talking about the pensions of all of our citizens, the pensions of each and every person you've been elected to represent. Now, we in our caucus have literally heard from tens of thousands of Albertans over the past week who are terrified about their retirement security and who don't understand why this government is moving to jeopardize or steal their CPP. Now, the Premier herself refused to debate this issue in the election campaign that we just came through. Now, she claimed there would be a referendum, but what she did not say, and what she never said, was that she would spend millions and millions of taxpayer dollars to spread lies and outright misinformation. Yet, that is exactly what is happening right now. Let me be very clear. The claims that the Premier and her spokespeople are making around the consequences of Alberta leaving the Canada Pension Plan are premised on make-believe numbers. This conversation causes profound levels of investment uncertainty, in part because the Premier is so willing to use numbers that are so fundamentally inaccurate and flawed. This is also not an attack on the federal government. It is an attack on the retirement security of Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Experts far and wide agree that reducing the size of an investment fund always puts that fund at greater risk. But the fact is, this is not just any investment. It is the retirement future of working people all across this country. The Alberta NDP is utterly and completely opposed to this, and we will do whatever it takes to protect your pension and the pension of every Albertan you represent. And I want you to know what we believe, that this pension, it does not belong to Justin Trudeau, it does not belong to Danielle Smith, it doesn't belong to me, it belongs to all of you, and it belongs to the people you represent, and it is their reward for decades and decades of hard work. Now, speaking of the work and the economy that grows, I'm also very worried about the damage we're doing to our economic future with the recent moratorium on renewable energy projects. Now, as you all know, the government announced this moratorium 57 days ago. Investors were caught off guard. Project proponents in the middle of getting necessary approvals were stopped in their tracks. We got international coverage, not the kind that we wanted, wherein people all across the world were asking why Alberta was putting up a closed sign, when the fact is global investment in renewable energy this year alone will reach $1.7 trillion. Yet somehow, here in Alberta, we're not interested in attracting any of it. This goes against who we are, and it comes at a time when Alberta was leading the country in renewable energy growth. In Alberta alone, this 7-month moratorium will jeopardize $33 billion in investment and 24,000 good-paying jobs. Those too have been put at risk. And in a sector like this, we know that even pressing pause risks us falling behind permanently and creating investor uncertainty in other sectors as well. Now, frankly, I think that government policy should be focused on creating jobs, not putting them in jeopardy. I think government policy should be focused on drawing investment here, not driving it away. Now, some of you may be asking, well, where is this investment going to go? Surely companies won't actually leave Alberta, right? Well, here's the thing. We've already lost companies to the US due to the Inflation Reduction Act. And I'm worried that this action by this government could result in us losing more. This is a big threat to our economic future. We risk the United States eating our lunch when it comes to energy development of all kinds, perhaps our dinner too. And I just don't think that it has to be this way. I absolutely, and so my caucus too, we absolutely support reviewing regulations around sustainable, renewable energy development that makes sure that things are cleaned up and things are done safely, of course. But I don't believe we need to shut the door on more than 100 projects while we do that. And this is on a broad economic level that these consequences worry me. Let's also talk about the households in your towns and your cities and your villages. Because this moratorium comes at a time when so many of your constituents are staring at monthly power bills in utter horror, with amounts owed that they just never could have imagined. We've heard from Albertans who are paying $500 more a month, even $800 more a month, just to keep the lights on in their home. And let's be really clear about this. Not only is renewable energy now the cheapest form of energy, it also spurs competition and it increases supply. And you know what? Both of those things lower costs for families, period. So it's for all this and so many other reasons that we believe the moratorium on renewable energy development in Alberta has to end. Now, I also mentioned keeping the lights on in people's homes. Well, that's hardly the issue if you are struggling to keep or find a home at all. So let me say this. We are in a housing crisis. In Calgary, in Edmonton, but also in so many other communities right across this province. The dream of owning a home is quickly turning into a nightmare for so many Albertans, and even others are being forced to go further, to skip meals or take on a second or even a third job just to pay their monthly rent. And this comes as the cost of groceries, utilities, car insurance, and so many other necessary things are still skyrocketing. One recent report showed a worker who earns minimum wage in Calgary, Edmonton, or Lethbridge can no longer afford to rent a modest one-bedroom apartment. There are reports of post-secondary students living in their cars, and I've actually heard from many who are worried about having to quit school altogether. And just a few days ago, out in my own constituency across the river there in Edmonton, Strathcona, a mom came up to me and she told me about her adult son who lives on Aish and has for many years. And he just had his rent jacked up by 50%. Neither of them, mom or son, had any idea about how he was going to stay in that apartment. No one on a fixed income can handle these kinds of increases. So it's clear that it's actually going to take all three levels of government working diligently and collaboratively to get in front of this housing crisis in Alberta before it gets any worse. However, in my view, one of those partners here in Alberta hasn't been at the table for several years now. Rather than building more affordable housing, the UCP is actually building less. This government is building half as many homes as they did last year. They're going to miss their own target by 7,000. Now, back when we were in government, it seems like a million years ago. That's just how old I am. It wasn't really that long ago. But nonetheless, back when we were in government, we were proud to put forward a $1.2 billion investment in new capital for affordable housing. And that would have put thousands of new homes in place right across this province, from Peace River in the north to Milk River in the south. But our current government failed to follow through on that historic commitment. They've decided that building affordable housing just isn't a priority, and they've left municipalities like yours to do most of the heavy lifting. And at the same time, they've cut multiple different rental assistance programs. Honestly, tens of thousands of people who used to get support to pay their rent no longer do all across this province now. And in the midst of this government doesn't even have a minister who is focused solely on housing. That just isn't right. We need more housing, and we need it now, and we need the provincial government to step up and do its job on that issue. And you know, we know as well, the absence of affordable housing also leads to a litany of other problems. It is, for instance, one of the significant contributors to the growth in the drug poisoning crisis that is claiming more Alberta lives than ever before. Now, I want to be clear. I understand there is absolutely no one simple solution to how we help our fellow citizens who are struggling with addictions illnesses. There are actually a number of things that we have to do. We need to start by keeping those people alive. And then we have to ensure that they have food and a place to sleep that night. And then we need to give them hope of staying off the streets, of getting their lives back, of successfully recovering, even if it takes well more than one try. And all of this, of course, as many of you know, will help to improve community safety. We all hear concerns about the growing levels of crime and feelings of uncertainty and lack of safety all across this province. Every level of government hears about that. It's a concern. Our citizens have to feel safe walking down the streets. So we need to make sure that our police have enough resources to do their job well, and that we're not asking them to perform jobs that they aren't trained for. That's why we propose not only hiring 150 more police officers all across the province, but also pairing them with an equal number of additional social workers, mental health professionals, addictions counselors, and community outreach workers. We need a more holistic approach, and I believe developing more of these integrated teams would be an important start, and that is something that the provincial government can start with right now. Now, we can't talk about the health of our communities either without actually talking about healthcare. Public healthcare is a provincial responsibility, and the challenges we face there are vast. Now, I know that nobody hears more about them than local representatives like so many of you. You also see it. You see it in the faces of expectant mothers in places like Sundre, Rimbey, Lethbridge, who are worried about ultimately having to face multiple hours on the highway while they're in labor. You see it in the signs that are posted on the door of a local clinic stating that the physicians working inside cannot possibly take on any more patients. And you see it in the constant closure of emergency rooms with little to no warning. Come on, these aren't fast food restaurants. These are facilities that can literally mean the difference between life and death. They should not have opening and closing times. That is the exact opposite of what an emergency is. Now, the current Premier promised to end the healthcare crisis 344 days ago. Instead, we've seen the opposite, and the facts don't lie. For example, in 2020, there were 887 doctors, province-wide, accepting new patients. Today, there are less than 200. We have to fix this. Now, I know Alberta's not alone in this crisis. That is true. But we are falling further and further behind. So we've made a number of proposals about this. We propose creating a team-based primary care model, one that surrounds our current doctors with other support staff of various backgrounds and skill sets. This is already being done to great effect in a few clinics, and it's reducing administrative burden on physicians and increasing the number of patients they can see and providing better care. So we can do more of that. We can also fast-track accreditation processes for doctors, nurses, and other professionals who are trained abroad. And while doing that, we can train the healthcare workforce of the future right here by adding 10,000 more post-secondary spaces in healthcare fields. We've talked to the schools. This can be done. It just takes political will. Now, as I said, public health care is the primary responsibility of the provincial government, and it is time our provincial government realizes that. Now, finally, and I know this has been a huge topic of discussion amongst you folks over the past 3 days, this government also needs to come to the table as a true partner with municipal representatives across this province, with you folks, in good times and in not so good times. Since the UCP took office, hundreds of millions of dollars have been cut from capital funding intended for your communities. Now, we had proposed working with all of you on a new municipal funding framework that we called Partners in Prosperity. We're in relatively good times right now, so the price of oil is higher than it's been and the government is reporting a surplus. So I believe it is the perfect time to be having a face-to-face negotiation, a conversation of equals about what our incredible cities, towns, and villages need to continue thriving for generations to come, to build the infrastructure for the future, to focus investments in the heart of your communities with all of you helping to drive the decision-making to build those rec centers, libraries, community rinks, roads, sewers, and so much more. I told Albertans this year that we wanted to build a better future together. And when I said that, I literally meant build it. So I still believe that this conversation can happen. And I see you folks here this week working so hard to keep the pressure on to make sure that it happens. And I want to thank you for that. In fact, that's what you do all the time. You are remarkable advocates for your communities. It's the people in this room who've kept up the pressure on so many important issues for your communities. You've kept up the pressure on whether or not we want a provincial police force. You've kept up the pressure on making sure we keep polluter pay. You've kept up the pressure on getting the taxes you're owed by companies that are operating in your backyards. And you folks have kept up with the pressure on so many other important issues, and you do that because you answer the call of public service each and every day. And you do that in so many ways. You journey to a convention like this to advocate passionately for the place that you all call home. The people in this room, all of you, are what makes this province so incredible. And seeing all of you here today really, really is so inspiring to me. It reaffirms for me that we really, really can build that better future for all Albertans. So let's roll up our sleeves and get down to work. Thank you for having me this morning. Congratulations on a great convention and trade show, and I look forward to working with all of you in the years and years ahead. Thank you all so much. And I think we're going to do just a quick Q&A.